Hello, everyone. I hope we have many people online. My name is James Bullock, and I'm the Dean of the School of Physical Sciences, and I'm here to talk to you about the last year, which has been a pretty eventful year. Sonia, I see that you're on. I have just a question. I don't see any way for me to take questions right now while I'm in presenter mode like this, and I don't know if there's a way if you want to jump back on and see if there's a clear way for me to take questions.
So at the very bottom of the screen, I see a Q&A session.
Okay, I do not.
Okay, well, how about I'll monitor them and I can jump in and present questions periodically.
Okay, so every now and then I'll pause and see if you can relay me some questions.
Will do.
So as I understand it, everybody has a box somewhere at the bottom of their screen. Well, they'll be able to click it and type in a question if they have one. And oh, it looks like maybe now I am starting to be able to see this. Yes, great. And John Evans has told me that he sees a Q&A, so great. So I hope other people can see their Q&A on the screen, and I think I might be able to monitor that as well. Great. Okay, everybody. So I'm very excited to tell you a little bit about the last year. It's been a very eventful year, as I mentioned, and I'm just going to get going. So I hope that you see that there's a web address down here. Over the last year, one of the things we've done is updated our website, and we have a lot of, I think, nice information there. If you want to find out about what's going on in the school, some of the stuff that I won't be able to get to, please keep track of that because we post videos and we've got lots of great news items for what's going on. So it's a great place to kind of keep in touch. So before I get started here, I just wanted to set the stage at UC Irvine. I think many of you may have seen that the U.S. News and World Report rankings came out very recently for the next year. UCI is again ranked as a top 10 public university this year, number 8. And this is just a fantastic testament to the excellence in this university, especially being so young. Let me also say that I think 5 of the top 10 were all UCs. And so we're really pleased to be in that company. Money Magazine has ranked UC Irvine as the #1 best college in the nation. And we continue to do incredibly well when it comes to the value of our education. And in particular, the New York Times continues to vote UCI as #1 in the nation for doing the most for the American dream. We are an incredibly diverse campus as well. If you look at the rankings, both the Wall Street Journal and U.S. News and World Reports have ranked UC Irvine's campus as a top 5 most diverse campus in the nation. And we are the only R1 research university in the top 5. So if you think about what we do and our mission, I think we're really hitting on all cylinders. The final thing I wanted to mention is last year in 2019, Sierra Magazine ranked us the #1 university in the country in terms of sustainability. You will find out Monday with another press release that we are again in 2020 ranked #1. We were #1 in 2018 as well. This is not a fluff ranking piece where some reporter just makes up the top 5 coolest schools in the nation. They're very strict with their criteria, and it's based on metrics. And if you think about what we do as a school in terms of operating, as a campus in terms of operating our own power grid, first fleet of electric buses in the nation, incredibly energy efficient buildings. This campus has 465,000 sensors taking data every second. And all the buildings are continuously monitoring that data and then adjusting in real time to make our energy efficiency incredibly precise. And so, as many of you know, the environment and sustainability has a deep legacy in this school, as I'll mention in a second. And the campus itself is walking the talk, as it were, in terms of those principles. As you all know, there's 4 departments in the school: chemistry, earth system science, mathematics and physics. We're now up to 166 faculty members with a few new ones over the last year. And we have 3,300 students who are majors in the physical sciences. This is not counting all of the other students at UCI who take our courses. 97% of the students at UC Irvine will take a course offered by our school. As you know, mathematics is crucial to so many different majors. And then obviously we have chemistry and physics, which are fundamental. And then the Earth System Science courses on climate are becoming increasingly popular. So, this is something we're extremely proud of. So anyway, very strong campus, very strong school. When I took over as dean about a little bit more than a year ago, I stepped into an incredibly high-functioning school. We're building on a tradition of excellence that includes 2 Nobel Prizes. We're coming off more than $60 million in research funding from federal agencies. Many faculty in the National Academy of Sciences, extremely highly cited, influential in all regards. And in starting our, when I took over as dean, we set some priorities, and in research, the priorities were going to be in quantum science and climate change. Specifically, quantum science is an area where there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in quantum materials, quantum information, quantum computing. And this is an effort that unites physics, chemistry, and math. There's people in each department who are working in this area, and there's a lot of transdisciplinary activity when we talk about materials, et cetera. And of course, climate change is an issue that's been fundamentally important in the Department of Chemistry, and then later in the Department of Earth System Science. And we've launched a new mission that's called Solutions That Scale, that actually unites not only the departments in our school, but many, many other schools on campus, including engineering and ICS and social ecology, to try to work on solutions to the climate challenge that scale. That is, they scale globally. We're working on things that will actually tangibly move the needle in this space. We had a number of other topics that we were excited about exploring and focusing on, one of which was improving and promoting an inclusive and supportive culture for everyone. Great organizations start with great culture, and this was an area in emphasis for us as well. Again, about a year ago. I think everyone knows that then March 2020 happened, and the landscape changed, I think, for everyone, including this school. Suddenly, education becomes remote. We have to figure out how we're going to continue to do the important research that we do in this landscape. And so COVID-19 had an impact on faculty, students, and research. And I have to say that I'm incredibly proud of the way that we've responded. Our faculty, if you think about what the faculty were faced with, right? So now they're learning to teach remotely. This is something that many of them had never done before. In fact, many of them were opposed to on principle prior to sort of needing to do it. People just want to be in front of their students. But they're learning to navigate that, and they really turned on a dime to figure out how to do that. In addition, research. Okay, how do you run a research laboratory in the era of COVID? And I'll mention more about that in a second. And then, of course, our students. I mean, they faced a lot. Adapting to remote delivery is a non-trivial thing. Where are they doing it? Can they find the resources to do it? And how are we helping them succeed in this landscape? And then finally, as I mentioned, research. We have turned on research, and in fact, some of our research never stopped. But what we had to do is implement standards for laboratory safety that went above and beyond even what we were doing before, where the standards were quite high. But we've done all this, and things are actually going quite well in that direction. So I'll talk a little bit more. I mentioned our website. One of the things we have now is sort of a page that has become a resource for our faculty, our and instructors, our researchers, and students and staff, where we're working on, we're sort of messaging and providing information, and everybody can go there and figure out what they need to do. If you're interested in sort of seeing what we're doing in that space, again, like I say, go ahead and take a look at that, and you can see the kind of things we're doing. As I mentioned, the faculty now are required to deliver their instruction remotely. And one of the first things we did is we leveraged, there's an incredible amount of education pedagogy expertise on this campus. There's a whole office of teaching excellence that Mike Denon oversees. And then of course we have a school of education where there's a center for online instruction that had already existed, one of the best in the world. And so one of the first things we did is worked with Mike Denon, and he actually created a course that all faculty can take, which is on best practices in e-course delivery. How do you set up a course that functions at a high level, that reaches all the students as best you can, that understands the fact that some students don't have access to as fast internet as others. Some of them may not even have a laptop that they have all the time, et cetera. So how do you build a course that's effective without leaving people out? And there are people who are experts on this. And one of the things we did is we now required, if you're going to teach a course in the School of Physical Sciences, you have to, at the very least, take this about 3-hour e-course on how you set up that thing, how you set up your classroom so that when you deliver virtually, it's as effective as we can be. We did a second thing, which is we established what we're calling a remote teaching task force. This consists of, every department actually has basically black belt instructors who have done online teaching before and have studied up not only on best practices, but also the technology. And what our best and most experienced faculty have done is they've created a best practices protocol tailored to each department, where it's example online courses and suggestions and how do you do testing, and all of these things are now engaged. So we have a school-wide task force. Each department has a couple of representatives that are kind of embedded into the departments, and we've built this out so that we're sort of ensuring as high a level as possible in our instruction delivery for every course. One of the silver linings to this is we've realized, why aren't we doing this in normal times? So why don't we have our best instructors constantly making everybody better all the time? And one of the things we're moving towards is developing a teaching pedagogy class that would be an e-course for everybody when they're onboarded, but then we're constantly refreshed on best practices. So how do you become a better instructor every single time you teach a course? And so I'm very proud of that. And I would say, there's a lot of worry, I think, now among college students and maybe parents of those students of, what are these students going to be getting now that things are mostly remote at a place like UCI? While it's not ideal, I would say that given the landscape, we are doing incredibly well compared to sort of our peers and this kind of delivery because of this kind of engagement and this kind of dedication. Our students, so we're working with them. We have similarly a set of recommendations for our students. We're making sure that they have best practices, or when you log in, what should you be doing? Should you have your camera turned on if at all possible? What kinds of things should you be making yourself do to be more efficient and effective? There are little things that you can do as a student that might make you more successful in this. We're also ensuring access. So for example, we have lab demos. There's faculty who are mailing out experimental apparatus to people, to their students, and then they can actually physically work on these experiments as part of, say, lab courses. We are beginning to implement a testing protocol, which ultimately, in the fall, students are going to be tested regularly. Right now, already the graduate students who live in graduate housing are are tested. All of them have been tested, I believe, at this point, and they're going to be regularly updated. The frequency for undergraduates is going to be higher than the frequency for graduate students. A lot of it is just we think that the graduate students are just going to be a bit more careful in their behavior. They're a little bit older, and we're working on more more testing for the undergraduates. So this is what we're doing with the students. And as I mentioned, research continues. Physical sciences has led the campus in COVID-19 laboratory and research safety. A lot of that stems from the fact that we are a lab-based school with incredibly high levels of safety protocols anyway. This is important. So I will mention that Dave Van Vranken, who is our Associate Dean for Undergraduate Education, reminds me that within an hour of the creation of the School of Physical Sciences guidelines for remote instruction, the School of Biological Sciences and the School of Information and Computer Sciences requested permission to send our guidelines to their faculty. So, I would say, this is an area where we're leading the way both for remote instruction, and then as I was mentioning, also for research. So one of the things that is important to recognize is that a number of our faculty turned on a dime and began working on research to fight COVID. And this includes physicists who were building devices that potentially, UV-based devices that would kill the virus in the air, aerosol chemists who were studying indoor air quality and the kind of masks that are most effective, chemical biochemists who were working on new treatments and new tests. And so a number of things were sort of really never turned off. So we shut down all research for a couple of days and then immediately provided mechanisms where people could appeal for special status for research to fight COVID-19. The protocols we ensured were pretty robust. So everybody had to send a map of their laboratory. Where were people standing? What was the time? When were people coming in and out? What was your mask policy? Who's reporting to who? We then used those protocols and developed some slightly more stringent ones to then begin reopening research that actually required physical presence, basically all the labs. And we're now at about 30% capacity for the research in the school. We have partnered with the campus to have a contact tracing program. So occasionally you will have somebody who maybe has a fever who was working in a lab. We have a way for them to go get a COVID test right away, and then the campus works with them to do contact tracing for other members maybe other members of the lab that they may have talked to during that time. So far, that's worked incredibly well. And again, I think that our policy and procedures have become a model for the campus. So we're proud of that, and we're proud of the research that continues to come out of the school in this unprecedented time. So some of there's a lot of research actually that's come out again on COVID. If you think about it, this is obviously a novel and brand new virus, but at the same time, this is just, I think, about less than half of the research stories that we've put out on various faculty members working on fighting COVID. So from, biophysicists using bacteria, we've got a lot of people in ESS who are doing studies on coronavirus and climate change. So for example, what has happened to emissions and how quickly did they go down and come back up? As I mentioned, masking, et cetera. Another thing that I'm very proud of is a lot of our faculty have been involved in creating online curricula, not just for our own college students, but for kids around the world. Everybody's locked down. There's so many students, young kids who are, basically at home, and our faculty have worked in partner with faculty in other schools to develop online curricula for kids. And this has been distributed as part of events with TED and other and the UN and other national organizations. So just a lot going on that we're very proud of. Of course, another thing that we've been struck with over the last several months is increasing realizations of issues with social justice. As I mentioned before, diversity and inclusion efforts have long been a priority, an important priority at UC Irvine and within the School of Physical Sciences. But we have, first of all, the students have been, traumatically affected, I think, by events. And we've tried to sort of up our ability to communicate and talk to them and figure out, what we can do to begin to make things better in these spaces. One of the things that I did as dean is started a listening campaign where I was doing one-on-one Zooms with undergraduate students and graduate students who particularly, either upset or extremely concerned about social justice, and try to understand what we could do as a school to kind of to help in these areas. One of the things that we're doing is we're creating an office for access and inclusion within the school. And this office is going to be charged with helping to open up access to students of all backgrounds to come and become STEM majors at UCI, either as undergraduates, but really a lot is focused on graduate school, but also reaching out into the community and doing STEM engagement of that kind. We are focusing on inclusion within the school and strengthening the community. We're aligning with what UCI has launched, which is called their Black Thriving Initiative, which we're all a part of. We've created multiple events for our Black students, faculty, and staff to talk to both us and to themselves to begin to build community. We are sponsoring other programs that I'll mention a little later. But this is something that we've taken a hard look at, and we certainly recognize that we need to do better. Even at a place like UCI, we need to do better, and certainly in STEM programs, we think it's important. One of the places that we're really working towards is being more inclusive in the classroom and making sure that we're conducting classrooms in a way that will close that achievement gap that's unfortunately so prevalent between minorities and others and people of privilege. So how can you run a classroom that really reaches everybody and everyone's rising and learning in part of that environment? One of the other goals that we've actually had, since last summer was trying to implement programs that promote and enable a more diverse and inclusive faculty. One of the first things that happened when I started as dean is we won an award from UCOP, the University of California, system-wide to help us advance faculty diversity. And one of the things we're doing as part of that grant is that we were doing, and we're hoping now to do next year in a little while, is to host a number of workshops and conferences. One that we already hosted was a Women in Southern California math conference. This was sort of one of the last in-person conferences we were involved in. And one of the things we are doing with that is it's the kind of folks who are on the faculty market that we could sort of make sure we're aware of all the talent that's in the area. I say in the area, but I mean in the discipline, because the people really were coming from all over the world for this conference for us to kind of get a sense of what's going on. And similarly, we're hosting conferences more broadly in the physical sciences and in other departments and other areas that we look forward to turning on, once we're allowed to meet in person again. Right now, our faculty, about 40% women, which is really not that bad for STEM, but I think, not that bad for STEM is really not the ideal, right? We want to shoot for absolute goodness. So, we aim for 50% because that's the population. 20% URM, which is, again, not particularly bad, but we'd like that number to be higher, but only 2% Black, and that is much below the population. even the population of people getting PhDs in STEM fields. So people talk a lot about the pipeline, but this is not a 100% pipeline problem. We're doing our best to sort of help with the pipeline problem, but there's other filters beyond the pipeline problem that we're working on. As part of this too, faculty really are in many ways the leaders in the frontward facing aspect of the school and what we do. And one of the things we want to make sure that faculty are aware of is at some level sensitivity training. Um, you know, we have sort of informal opportunities for people to learn about things like implicit bias and how to actually be, how to run a laboratory, how to run a research group in a way that's fair and inclusive. But there's a lot of domain expertise in this area, and we are beginning to work on just onboarding mechanisms where everybody who walks in the door learns about what implicit bias is, learns about what a microaggression, what those words mean, and then so they can at least get themselves prepared mentally to think about what they need to do. The context of this is most faculty are hired based because they're basically the very best in the world at the research that they do. And they are. But because they've dedicated their lives to being the very best in the world at this thing that they do, they're not necessarily the very best in the world at all these other things that they're now going to be asked to do as a faculty member, right? They have no training on this a lot of the times. And so one of the things we're working towards is making sure our leaders, who are incredibly smart and capable people, are exposed to the ideas and best practices that are known, so that then they can implement them and really run effective research groups and become effective teachers. Let me pause there. Sonia, do we have any questions that I need to be that have come up that I should answer?
We're doing okay. Any of the questions that have come, I've been able to answer. So, but we're doing all right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. What are we doing for our students during this unprecedented time? We've been working very hard to help create communities. And of course, this is going to be hard because it's virtual now. But there are a number of things that we're sort of leveraging that have already come out. One of the things I'm really excited about and very proud of is a program that's called PACE, that has to do with peer mentoring that's born out of the physics department. This was a program that was actually built by initially a couple of graduate students, two women who were, I think, first-year graduate students when they started doing this thing. And it's become something that's sort of a mainstay of the department. What they do is every first-year graduate student who comes in gets matched with a mentor. And the mentor is actually trained to be a mentor through programs that the campus offers. So they're a trained mentor. And this is an idea of, when you start graduate school, a lot is going on. You're navigating new classes at a higher level than probably you've taken before. You now have to worry about your thesis and passing a qualifying exam and what it means to get a PhD and all of those things. And it's a lot to navigate. And what they've done is they've built this peer mentoring structure to help each other. They have weekly meetings every Friday, and they have things called Fire Up Fridays where they talk about, okay, how are you navigating your classes? Is there anything that's come up in research that you don't know what to do about? And it's all the stuff about graduate school that's not the specific detailed problem, that you're trying to solve, which is sort of what you're doing with your PhD advisor and maybe other people in your research group. It's all the other stuff that makes graduate school challenging. And this has been an incredibly, I think, powerful and important program. And it's helped with recruiting tremendously, because when you have a visiting graduate student, they come and they see this kind of positive culture that's built from the ground up. We're now, it's amazing the kind of talent we're able to recruit if we have both the sort of intellectual aspect that's sort of the bleeding edge research and this extremely powerful and important culture we're supporting. And so one of the things the school has done is we're now going to support financially students who are running those programs with effectively TA type or really fellowship type positions, so that now they don't have to run the peer mentoring program and TA a class and do their own research. they may not have to TA a class now because they're being compensated for this, for running this program for every other graduate student in the department. And this is something we're spreading out. And I think it's an incredible, I think the investment is easily justified. Um, we've had a lot of BLM and diversity mixers, town halls in the wake of the George Floyd shooting, reading groups. Students and the faculty have come together on Zoom calls to discuss these issues with an emphasis on free speech and open and fair discussion. And again, I think it's helped to create an even stronger culture within a lot of departments than existed before all of this. And so I think our response to these issues has been quite positive. And like I said, we're emphasizing closing the achievement gap in STEM. And this is something we're leaning into as educators. How do we do things the right way? A final thing I want to mention is in establishing this access and inclusion outreach office, we're starting to build collaborations with the other STEM schools. So for example, the schools of engineering and information computer science have regularly been visiting historically Black colleges and universities, basically on recruiting trips. And we're now going to be joining them on those trips. The first trips are virtual, but next year we hope they're actually in person, where we get to talk about who we are, what we do, and why students there may want to apply to UCI. And I think we have a lot of sort of joint efforts with these schools in the future that I'm very excited about partnering with them on these common missions. All in all, this is just going to make us stronger as a campus and as a school. So again, in research, we're focusing on culture. So how do you be an effective lab manager? How should you be really a boss who listens and make sure that everybody feels listened to in a research group? Like I said, we're not all experts on these things, and we're trying to educate ourselves to sort of run effective programs. So, I talked about, where things were in the beginning, sort of last summer, a little bit more than a year ago, and how strong we were and the trajectory we were on. We are still on a very positive trajectory, but something has sort of forced our attention to adapt in real situations, and I'm very proud of that. And I think that we have a great future ahead of us. What we're trying to do here is educate the next generation of scientists and leaders. We're also producing research, which I'm incredibly proud of, that spans the fundamental to the practical, coming up with ideas for energy and ideas for what the fundamental particles of the universe are, new advances in quantum science, and all of these other things that we do. So proud of that mission. And of course, funding is part of that because you need to pay graduate students, and you need to now clean your labs all the time and administer these things. And unfortunately, as I'm sure everyone knows, the state has been hit, the budget has been hit, and the budget's going to probably hit harder next year. And so what we're trying to do is figure out, how do we stand up all of these things and take advantage of actually the opportunity landscape that we're faced with, so that we emerge from this whole issue stronger. And this is a place where I'm so happy that we have so many supporters like you who are on this call, who continue to support the School of Physical Sciences. Now more than ever, those funds are so crucial to what we're trying to do. If you think about the way the research, the federal research cycle works, it takes at least a year to fund a grant. So even if you're the 8% of the PIs who get a grant funded in any given cycle, which is already pretty high odds, it's going to take you a year from beginning to write that grant to get the funds to then do the research. When you're working on something as novel as COVID, you just got to start working on it. And a lot of that's, one of the things I've done with the Dean's Excellence Fund that many of you have contributed to is I've pushed funds into COVID research. And I'm super proud of that. I think it's exactly the right thing to do. And I think in the long run, it's going to be a great thing. If you would like to continue to help us do those things, please do it. Now more than ever, like I said, it's so valuable right now. And I think we're doing important stuff. The other thing I just want to mention too is, one of the things I truly believe is that great institutions are not only smart but they're wise, right? They're you need a positive culture where people are happy to sort of come to work, even if coming to work is virtual sometimes. You have to feel good about the environment that you're in, so you want to come back to work. You can work with your colleagues and really get the most out of your experience, either as a student or a researcher or both, if you're a grad student. And so again, we continue to emphasize this idea of an open-minded culture where we're listening to ideas, we're listening to people from various disciplines, chemists and physicists working together, for example, but also different backgrounds, both with experience and and everything else. I mean, I really believe that having an open, inclusive culture is one of the things that's going to be a hallmark here. And we do, so proud of the way we work together as a school. So moving forward, of course, things are not ideal, but boy, we're learning how to do this. And I'm so proud of the stuff that's happening just every single day. So much is happening, and so much good is actually happening from the school. And this is one of the things that makes my job just so rewarding and wonderful. Like I said, we're going to continue to focus on culture and diversity in addition to research excellence and teaching excellence. I think it's all connected. We were making progress on fighting COVID-19. We have all kinds of stuff we're doing in relation to climate and energy solutions. And we have a new quantum institute we're establishing called the Enrollment Quantum Institute that we are thrilled to work towards building new ideas in quantum materials, because it may be that understanding the quantum world is going to lead to sort of the very next kind of technological revolutions that we're anticipating and excited about. One of the things that I haven't mentioned is we do have a new Dean's Executive Cabinet, where I've asked a number of our really dedicated and visionary helpers to join, and that's this cabinet here. I think a couple of these folks are on this call. I think Michael and John are on now. If you are, I want to thank you so much for joining this cabinet, and I think Julie and Andy can't be here today, but again, their wisdom and helping us navigate what's happening now and shape a vision for the future is something we're thrilled about. One of the goals that we have, one of my primary goals continues to be to name this school. And if you think about, value and naming something, boy, there's a huge amount of value here in this school. The only Nobel Prize for climate research ever was based on research that happened entirely in the building where the dean's office is now, that we now call Rowland Hall, right? So this was Sherry Rowland's work. The legacy of neutrino physics, the depth of impact we've had in chemistry, and not to mention the very first and trailblazing Earth System Science Department and the legacy of Ralph Cicerone and others in that department. And by the way, the math department is just killing it both in applied math and fundamental math. I mean, there was just a new breakthrough that was published on the archive yesterday, having to do with a fundamental problem in combinatorics that one of our new assistant professors just banged out in a little 4-page letter. So the excellence just keeps coming, and I'm so proud of all of that. So thank you for joining us today and hearing a little bit about what we've been up to. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope if you have questions, you can post them. Most of the online offerings, I think, will be more exciting than just my head droning on. We will continue to do our events with virtual talks where you hear directly from the researchers on what they're doing. We will be doing these compelling conversations. If you haven't partaken in those are just, I love doing those because we bring in a few experts, usually an alum, and then a couple of experts doing interesting frontline research And we just talk about it. And I get to ask kind of dumb questions, and they answered them in a smart way. So it's been, I think, a great activity. Keep an eye out for Alumni Day in the spring. We're going to be doing that virtually, but we're going to figure out a way to make it interesting, compelling. And finally, keep your eye out also for a survey. We're going to be asking you what you want to see. Do you want to see more faculty? Do you want to do opportunities where you can just do Q&A with them? Do you want to meet some graduate students? I mean, what do you want to see? We're happy to show you, because we want to give back to you with every, given everything you've done for us. So with that, I'm going to stop, and I'll take any questions if there are any. So I don't see any questions so far. Okay. So John Drace is asking, what is the Quantum Materials Initiative? And the other John Evans, is asking if we'll make the PowerPoint available. Yes, we'll definitely make this PowerPoint available. And let me say a few words about the Quantum Initiative. We have a pretty deep legacy, within the school for people working on quantum science broadly defined. And so this comes from people in physics working on what a quantum material is, and the coming down to the fundamental theory of how atoms and electrons interact when they're in confined spaces. And then chemists are actually building new kinds of molecules. This quantum initiative was actually started by a man named Roy Edelman, who I think Roy is not on this call, but he's a new supporter of the school, who's very interested in quantum science. And he has established an initial Edelman Quantum Institute, which is a joint effort that combines chemists and physicists who are working in quantum science. So just to sort of try to speak plainly about what this means, you may have heard about the possibilities in quantum computing. We think it may be possible to build a quantum bit that will be an incredibly, much more efficient way of doing calculations that could be exponentially faster than standard traditional computers. And we have people in this school who are working in that area. But another place that's interesting when you think about quantum computing is when we get quantum computers to work, it's not clear what problems they're actually going to be better at than traditional computers. But almost everyone agrees that the problem they will be better at is simulating quantum systems. That is simulating what happens when you stick two molecules together and how they change. And so one direction that we're really focusing on is an idea that we call quantum design, where if you can design molecules on computers, and actually make accurate predictions for what these things are going to do when you put new materials together, you can envision just cutting out all kinds of experimental inefficiencies and do things like build from scratch high temperature superconductors, building from scratch incredibly energy efficient windows, for example, or even build micro robots that could go inside the human body and cure disease. This might sound like a pipe dream, but it's actually not if you're living in a world where you have quantum computers and you know how to code them. And there's incredible investment in this area from lots of companies, from Google to Honeywell to all kinds of places. But what they need is a quantum workforce. And so what we envision is creating quantum degrees in quantum science, new interdisciplinary PhD programs in quantum science to train that next generation of research of workforce, while also doing fundamental research in quantum science of the kind that can only be done in the university environment. So this is a future that I think is very bright, and it's something we're kind of leaning into. And I think you'll hear more about this area in the future. I've also been asked by Stephen Franklin about the new building. So if you see here, you see this building here, that's I'm floating above a new building called the Interdisciplinary Science and Engineering Building that is Getting close to done. All the outside's done. Many of the floors are actually done, and the top floor is now being outfitted. Um, this is a joint building that will, the School of Physical Sciences has about a third of the space in that building, but it's also occupied by people from the School of Engineering and Information Computer Science. And the idea is there's a number of research themes that unite this building, and one of them is engineered health, and another area is climate. And as you know, we have a lot of chemists doing very important work in the area of health and designing new medicines and things like that. And obviously, we have a rich legacy when it comes to climate science and new ideas in energy that are sort of and water that are sort of related to these aspects. And a lot of that's going to be going on in that building. It is going to be awesome. We cannot wait to show it off and do a grand opening in person, which we hope, maybe 6 months from now, or maybe a little bit longer. We're hoping we're going to be able to do that. And there's a lot of cool stuff happening. And so one of my aspirational goals is we're going to have a geospatial visualization lab in that building, where all of our climate science folks who use this wonderful data can display this virtually, use that as a mechanism to do their research, but then also we'll be able to bring people in there and show them, okay, what's the landscape? What's the air quality like? Where are the fire hotspots? What would happen to the air quality if we could get CO2 under control? Or if we did this, this or that kind of policy change, et cetera. So we're very excited about that. Okay, a few other questions. Another question that we have here is, how strong are the new graduate and undergraduate enrollments for the fall in the time of COVID? We're actually pretty strong. Undergraduate enrollment is about what it was last year. So we have not taken the hit. Now, the real question is, I'm going to be honest with you, we don't know, just because people have said they're coming and they're enrolled, will they pay their fees? And so there's this constant worry that they're going to do it and they're going to be ready, and then they're actually not going to pay and they're going to get kicked out of class, but then we need that income or the university's going to be in trouble. So I don't know what's happening there. But so far, so good, actually. So far, the grad pool, we're not worried about them. Most of them are here already and already starting to engage. Graduate students look really strong. And the undergraduates look on track. And so I'm confident. I think that we are going to offer them, as good as can be offered, as I've mentioned. And so I'm confident they're going to enroll and stay enrolled and be anteaters. Another question, is there an opportunity to expand the PACE program with the alumni mentoring engagement, where grad students invite alumni to be their mentors? Yeah, I mean, one of the things we want to do is we have an undergraduate mentoring program that I think a lot of you, many on the call, are probably a part of, that we've long been doing with mentors who are alums, work with our existing undergrads and sort of have these nice kind of informal relationships. I think it would be wise to sort of link those two together. That is a great idea. If you are an alum and you want to help with the grad student mentoring aspect, reach out and we'll see what we can do. I'm sure we can come up with something interesting and useful there. They're a very open-minded group. They've, some of these grad students have actually reached out to alums that they know and brought them in for talks, and we're always open for more of that. I mean, boy, I think if we can leverage the excellence in our alumni base to sort of give back to the grad population, that would be absolutely wonderful, and I would love that. Okay, I don't see any other questions popping up. Sonia, do you see anything else?
We have one more question. It's about, can you share a little bit more about solutions at scale?
Okay. Sure. So Solutions at Scale is an effort that we started, that was born of talking to a couple faculty in earth system science. So in particular, Steve Davis, if you know him, and Eric Rignot, who's the chair. One of the things we did, one of the things I did when I started is I got these guys together and I said, look, the world is facing an existential problem, right? The biggest thing right now that touches our school involves climate change and energy. What should we do? Okay, so we have this tremendous school. What do we need to do? And one of the things that came back right away is I said, look, it's not just our school, but it's the campus. The campus is working on things that touch this because it's a global problem. And so you have to tackle it and think about it from not just the core physical science aspect, which is so crucial, and the new inventions of brand new technology, but also the engineering that goes with implementing these solutions and figuring out best practices, and the computer science that goes into managing the data and understanding how to implement things, and the policy implications, and how does this affect public health in the long run? What are the legal ramifications, right? So suddenly now, and then you're talking to the business school. So suddenly now, it becomes this thing that's clearly a problem that really needs to sort of embrace the campus. And so we created this thing that we call Solutions That Scale as a mechanism to sort of bring together key and influential parties on the campus to talk about how do we begin really tangibly moving the needle on climate change. And so far, let me just say that there are now 4 schools that have been sort of meeting regularly in this endeavor, and I've gotten commitments from the deans of these schools to begin supporting transdisciplinary graduate student research in areas that are really aimed at coming up with solutions that really will scale globally, as far as we can tell, and to work things out. So that's a piece of this. But the other piece of this is that we don't want to be an ivory tower, right? We don't want to be, just a really big department that encompasses the whole campus. We want this really to be a nexus of ideas where we're hearing from industry partners, we're hearing from people who are out in the world who want to do the right thing, but maybe want to know, should we invest in this versus that? What are the coastlines going to look like around here, and how do we react to that? What questions do they want the answers to? And then how can we help them answer those questions, right? The same thing with policymakers. How can we understand what your desires are and then communicate those to you? So this is not about writing papers that nobody is ever going to read. This is really about interfacing with the world in the way that a land grant institution is designed to do. I think as a land grant institution, it is our duty to focus our endeavors on things that help society and engage with the world as much as we can. And this is really what I think Solutions That Scale is all about. It's creating this mechanism where we're engaging people from the outside. If you want to hear more about this, please let me know. I have one other question here from Michael Gokal. Michael, good to see you or virtually at least. People may know that he's the founder of an online education company, and he wants to know what's being done to reduce the cost of course material for our students. Michael, I think we should do more. I mean, I think, the quality of free online textbooks, are we encouraging people to use those? To some extent, yes. I mean, I think that this will be a topic that sort of when this becomes an education task force, as opposed to sort of a response task force to just figure out how to just make stuff work virtually, those will be the kind of topics that we'll embrace at the school level that can then sort of propose policies that trickle down to the departments. One of the things that people may or may not know is there's an incredible amount of delegation of power, I would say, with what the departments are doing. That is, I can't go in and say, you need to use this textbook and do things this way or whatever. I mean, that's just not how, that's not how universities work. At some level, faculty do what they want under the auspices of what their majors, how the track of their majors go. And so, but I'll say that this is a crucial point. And I think the more we can create a sort of broader community of teaching experts that come from all departments and think about questions exactly like this, how can we bring down the cost of textbooks and things of that nature for our students so that they get even more out of their college experience, the better it will be. Any other questions? Sonia, do we have anything else I may have missed?
Maybe one, just address machine learning collaborations.
Oh, yeah, okay. So there is another thing that we've launched. We launched this again pre-COVID, but it's been going strong throughout the pandemic, is a program that we call the Machine Learning Nexus. So machine learning and AI has been an area that has become increasingly important in lots of different areas over the last sort of 5 years in particular, especially as computers have gotten faster. And it's become increasingly used in chemistry, in physics, and earth science. And in fact, in mathematics, a number of our mathematicians are actually doing cutting edge fundamental work in new ideas in machine learning, that is, developing brand new algorithms. And so one of the things that we recognized is that this is actually a uniting aspect of the school, that there are these techniques that are really being utilized by every department. And, you know, I did an informal survey and was something like half the faculty are now beginning to use machine learning in their research. And that number just keeps going up. And so what we've done is we've created this nexus where we actually have a weekly seminar series where a speaker from inside the school talks about what they're doing. And it's, you know, lots of departments, every department is taking part now. In fact, when we used to have to meet in person, it would overflow the room. I mean, literally, you know, you'd have to sit on the floor to get in the room. So that's one bright spot of doing this by Zoom, because there's no limit on that. So what's happening is they're sharing ideas. Like, I've been trying to do it this way. Has anyone else done this? And this has been extremely, I think, positive, because you have the sort of domain experts who are inventing machine learning algorithms and the mathematicians sitting together with the users and the other departments who are trying to work together. And of course, we are closely partnering with the School of Information Computer Science, people like Pierre Baldi over there and others who come and participate, and they're very happy to learn about the problems that we're investigating. Let me just give you one anecdote. There's a very big NSF Science and Technology Center proposal that's going out, that's being led by Columbia, but UCI is playing a major role in it. And I was on a call with NSF program officers just yesterday, and they were asking about things. And so one of the goals of this proposal is to bring machine learning to climate change models, and to be able to make these extrapolations of the future temperature more precise, to close those error bars on the sort of wide error bar on what the temperature is going to be in 20 years. And it turns out machine learning can be a really powerful tool for that, because you can use it to, for example, improve your cloud modeling and your interface models with glaciers and stuff like that. And one of the hard questions they asked was, well, how do you use machine learning to improve your physics understanding? And maybe you can work with particle physicists who've been doing this, you know, to find out more. And I was able to say, well, it just so happens that in our machine learning nexus, we have particle physics physicists, for example, Daniel Whiteson, who's using machine learning to learn new physics, sitting in the room with Mike Pritchard, who is our person in Earth system science who's doing climate modeling with machine learning. And they're both kind of talking to each other. So you really are learning from each other in exactly the way that, you know, this program officer was asking about. And it's this kind of interface activity, I think, that is a hallmark of this school. The fact that these people know each other, right? They know each other by name, and they recognize each other when they're, you know, see each other outside. That is a huge deal. And it's not like that on most campuses. And it's another reason why I'm so proud of this school. I hope this was useful for you all, and I hope to get to see every single one of you in person in the not too distant future. Bye-bye.